Tranquilia by Nicholas Rivers. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Chapter 1. The Murder Gene. Jack Midling looked up from the newspaper. His blue eyes traced the line where the pointed green treetops covering the mountainside met the sky. The crash of the surf, like distant applause, was faintly audible. "Genevieve," Jack called out. His tone was gentle, but loud enough to carry through the open window behind him. The motorized sliding glass door hissed open, and Genevieve Midling stepped onto the porch, her golden hair splaying out onto the shoulders of her pink robe. "Happy birthday, Jack," Genevieve said, running the fingers of one hand through his half-gray head of hair. She leaned down, kissed his cheek, while pulling a black jewelry box from the pocket of her robe and placing it on the table in front of Jack. "Ah, Genevieve, I told you not to get me anything." "Jack, it's your 50th birthday. You wouldn't let me throw you a party. I had to do something. Open it." Jack picked the box up. He gently opened the hinged lid and looked inside. There was a gold cross with a fine link chain tucked beneath it. "It's beautiful, Genevieve. You know I just hate anyone making a fuss over me. I've never really craved attention very much, except from you, that is," Jack said, lifting the cross from the box. He held the chain and watched the cross dangle at eye level, twirling first one way then another before lowering it back into the jewelry box. "You're the sweetest, Jack." "I'm sourdough next to you, Princess." "How long have you been out here? I was trying to wake up before you. Remember, you were supposed to sleep in today," Genevieve said. "Believe me, I tried, Genevieve. But every time I closed my eyes, I thought of how old I am and how little time I probably have left. I figured coming out here and reading the paper might help me forget about it." "You may be the last man on the planet who reads an actual newspaper, Jack. You know that, right?" Genevieve said, suppressing a smile. "I need something I can crinkle in my hands. Helps with my nervous energy. I think reading on real paper lets me absorb the information better." "I think you were born in the wrong century, Jack." "I like the century just fine. It's the last decade where things have really started going downhill. Speaking of my ancient newspaper, right below the headline about Julius Caesar being assassinated, I read a story that I thought someone about to earn her PhD in neuroscience might find interesting." "Is it good news or bad news, Jack? If it's anything like that story you read me last week about the woman mauled by her own two dogs, I don't want to hear it. It's too early in the morning." "No, no, it's none of the usual unpleasantness, Genevieve. I'd call this more of a scientific oddity than anything." "You promise?" "I promise, babe. Scout's honor." "Okay, shoot," Genevieve said. Jack took a deep breath, held the newspaper up to eye level, and began to read. "Murder gene identified. Scientists in Switzerland this week report that they've identified a genetic change strongly associated with violent behavior. The researchers compared DNA sequences from criminals on death row with DNA from nonviolent offenders. They found a small but consistent difference in the DNA of the violent criminals within a gene called monoamine oxidase, or MAO for short. The lead researcher on the paper, Dr. Franz Wallenstein, said in an interview with the Associated Press yesterday, "We believe that the sequence change located within the MAO gene may alter the balance of neurotransmitters, in particular brain regions responsible for aggression and impulsivity. This study represents an important first step toward furthering our understanding of the true biological underpinnings of sociopathic behavior." Dr. Wallenstein emphasized that much work remains to be done, but ultimately he hopes their discovery will lead to new treatments for a variety of mental illnesses. The full manuscript containing Dr. Wallenstein's data was published Monday in the peer-reviewed journal Incogiter. Jack put the newspaper down and looked up at Genevieve. "What do you think?" "I don't know, Jack. The media loves to sensationalize scientific findings. They just want a headline that will grab your attention," Genevieve said, taking a sip from her teacup. "Why is it so far-fetched, Genevieve, that a gene might control violent behavior? Aren't wolves more aggressive than dogs because of genetic differences? Why couldn't people be similar? People aren't animals, Jack. That's why. Genes can give you brown or blue eyes, make you short or tall, but they don't decide how you behave, Genevieve replied. What about identical twins? They often share a lot of complex behaviors even when they're separated at birth, Jack said. Remember your nieces, Jenny and Jane? They're identical twins. How similar are they? Genevieve said. You got me there, Genevieve. Those two are complete opposites. Jenny got pregnant and ran away from home when she was 15. Jean was her high school valedictorian and went to Harvard. But did you ever notice how they would both always do that twitchy thing with their nose whenever they were nervous? That's my point exactly, Jack. Your genes may determine simple physical traits, but they don't determine the choices you're going to make in life. Do you know what I think was determined by my genes? Jack said, rising from his seat. He turned toward Genevieve as he did so, jostling her teacup. Careful, you're going to get burned, silly, Genevieve said, putting the cup down on the table next to Jack's newspaper. I think it was written into my DNA that I should love you until the end of time, Jack said, pulling her close to him. I am the luckiest man on this planet. You're the luckiest man on any planet, Jack Midling, Genevieve said, smiling. She rested her head against his chest as the wind quickened around them. Jack looked west. Genevieve followed his gaze. In the still young azure morning sky, alabaster white clouds floated eastward in an endless procession over the momentarily placid Pacific. Funny, the newspaper said we're going to have thunderstorms this afternoon. You'd never guess it from the way things look right now, Jack said. Well, you can't believe everything you read in the newspaper, Jack, Genevieve said, a smile touching her lips. What do you say we hike down to the cove while the weather is still nice? I packed a special birthday lunch for you. I don't know. It rained last night. The rocks are probably slippery. Oh, come on, Jack. You sound like an old man. I'll hold your hand if you're scared. Very funny, Genevieve. Chapter 2. Windermere. The mansion where Jack and Genevieve spent most of their time looked as though it would be more at home in the French Riviera, with its towering stone turrets and myriad courtyards, than on the isolated strip of coastline in Northern California where it had been constructed. Jack had named the property Windermere after a castle in a children's story he frequently read to the couple's three daughters when they were young. The westward wall of Windermere abutted a spiderweb-like network of intricately interwoven paved brick paths. These walkways emanated outward like spokes in a wheel from a central courtyard. Altogether, the gardens covered 10 acres of land between Windermere and the redwood forest that separated the property from the ocean side. Amidst this whirlwind of color and fragrance, the central courtyard was a perfect square paved in gleaming white cobblestones. Unlike the bricks on the paths throughout the rest of the garden, which were loosely spaced with ground up gray rock filling the gaps between them, the white pavers lining the courtyard fit together precisely like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, with no perceptible gaps between the rocks. In the center of the courtyard stood a sculpture of four white lions perched upon a large rectangular stone in the middle of a black walled reflecting pool. Each of the lions had been carved from a single block of white marble. One of the lions faced in each of the cardinal directions. A stream of water poured from between the curving canines of each stone animal's open mouth down into the black bottomed reflecting pool beneath them. The edges of the reflecting pool were made of shining, smooth, black polished stone, which formed a bench around the fountain. Jack and Genevieve strolled through the garden hand in hand. They walked westward across the white courtyard, past the Fountain of the Lions, and along a path that led them to the edge of the garden. They crossed a meadow of tall swaying grass and interspersed wildflowers. The sun shone brightly in the blue sky above them, warming their backs as they walked. The narrowness of the unpaved dirt path winding through the meadow forced Jack to walk slightly ahead of Genevieve, instead of side by side as they had on the wider garden path. After crossing the meadow, the trail pierced a thick redwood forest. Genevieve looked up as they walked below the intertwining branches. Isolated beams of sunlight shone through the canopy, and innumerable particles floated languidly through the air above them. The path climbed upward for a short while before they emerged into blinding, unfiltered sunshine. They were now standing on the edge of a rocky cliff 300 feet above the Pacific Ocean. Jack and Genevieve paused here for a short time, arms around each other, looking out at the ocean as the echoes of the waves crashing against the shoreline below reverberated upwards. Directly in front of them, a large rock formation jutted up 100 meters from the ocean's surface, creating a lagoon that was somewhat protected from the surf. Pale brown sand stretched along the water's edge, forming a beach beside the lagoon. Jack had discovered this oasis by accident, hiking around the property just after the couple had moved into Windermere several years before. The contractors he had hired carved a series of steps into the rocks of the cliffside so that he and Genevieve could more easily make the descent down to the beach. Even with the addition of this stone staircase, however, the journey could still be treacherous, especially if the rocks were slickened by recent rainfall, as they had been that day. With a nimbleness that would have made the most experienced mountain ram jealous, Genevieve descended the rocky steps. As Jack walked circumspectly down the steps behind her, a large wave crested over the rocks, drenching him from head to toe in seawater. When they got to the bottom, Jack lay down on the tiny beach next to Genevieve and pulled off his sopping wet shoes and t-shirt. Thank goodness the sun's shining. I thought you were going to hold my hand, Jack said. Well, you looked like you were doing fine last time I saw you. Didn't you just say you turned 21 years old this morning? I meant that in a figurative sense, Genevieve. You did fine, Jack. Wasn't it Mark Twain who said that old age is an issue of mind over matter? If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Well, I mind. Come on, Jack. I'm only 5 years younger than you. I'm not sure what your secret is, Genevieve, but I wish you'd share it with me, Jack said, sitting up and wrapping his arms around her. Genevieve pushed him away and opened the pack she'd been wearing on her back. She removed a bottle of wine that she'd wrapped in a sweater to keep from breaking, two wine glasses, a small charcuterie board, and a glass jar containing cheese and figs. She opened the wine with a corkscrew and filled their glasses before neatly arranging the food on the wooden plank and setting it on the sand between them. May your next 50 years be even better than the first, Genevieve said, raising her glass toward Jack as he did the same. As long as I have you, they will be, Jack said. Cheers. They brought their glasses together. Just beyond the rocks of the sheltering cove, the waves crashed, filling the air with a salty mist Jack could taste intermingled with the wine. He emptied the glass into his mouth, let the wine sit on his tongue for a moment, then lay down onto the beach, feeling the familiar warmth from the alcohol spreading throughout his chest. Later that afternoon, when they had returned to Windermere, Jack and Genevieve lay together on a long white sofa in the observation room located on the top floor of the mansion. They stared out the window at the tree-covered hillside and ocean below. Looks like the meteorologists were right after all, Jack said as he pulled the blanket from the back of the couch over them. He pushed a button on the arm of the couch, and a painting above the fireplace dissolved into millions of pixels, revealing itself to be a paper-thin digital display screen. On the screen, a man in a blue shirt and a checkered tie was standing in front of a red brick building with the words Bay County Bar and Grill painted in white letters above the doorway. Good afternoon, folks. I'm here on the scene of, by what all accounts say, was a tragic massacre last night at the Bay County Bar and Grill. A gunman entered the bar around 10:15, opening fire, killing 5 people, wounding 10, and then turning the weapon on himself. Jack abruptly changed the channel, stopping on a basketball game between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Golden State Warriors. I think I like the painting better, Genevieve said, gazing up at the flashing screen. Sorry, Jack said. It seems like the news gets worse every day, Genevieve said. Thunder rolled over the mansion, distant and low at first, then rising in volume and engulfing the home in vibrations that shook the large panes of glass within their frames. Drops of rain began to splash against the roof. The gentle tapping soon exploded into the rapid fire pelting of an all out cloudburst. Oh no, we're supposed to meet the Hendersons this evening, Genevieve said. We may have to cancel if the storm doesn't pass in time, Jack said, yawning and not looking unhappy in the least at the prospect of staying right where he was. 20 minutes later, Jack was in a deep slumber next to Genevieve. Hey, they're talking about the Mars mission, Genevieve said, shaking Jack's shoulder gently. He reluctantly opened his eyes to see a tall blond man in a spacesuit with his helmet held by his hip. Across from this man, who was obviously an astronaut, stood a red haired female reporter holding a microphone. Behind them was a shining, black metal jet parked in front of an open aircraft hangar. The hardest part for me will be leaving my family for so long, the astronaut said to the reporter. I can imagine that must be difficult. What makes you willing to go through with it? The reporter asked. Well, since I was a kid, I've loved to explore, to go to new places. That's one reason. But I also think this is something that will benefit humanity, the astronaut said. The screen flashed to a computer animation depicting the two-part mission. Can you believe humans are finally going to start colonizing Mars? Jack said. It's about time, Genevieve replied. You're right. We've been a one planet species too long, Jack said. The story about the Mars mission ended, and the screen jumped back to the studio where the news anchor was now sitting next to a graphic depicting a double helix spinning in space. The words, Murder Gene Found, were superimposed in bold over the revolving DNA molecule. Scientists in Switzerland this week report that they have identified a gene associated with extremely violent criminal behavior, the news anchor began. We sent our lead science reporter, Jenny Frederick, to investigate and get the full story. Jack and Genevieve looked at each other. The screen flashed, and the same reporter from the astronaut clip, with her microphone in hand, was now standing next to a tall, bearded, bespectacled man in a white lab coat. It's the same story I read to you this morning, Jack said. Thanks, Frank. This is a really interesting story. I'm here with geneticist Dr. Franz Wallenstein, the lead author on a paper that has already caused quite a stir across the globe. Some are even saying you have discovered what could be called a murder chain. Would you say that's an accurate description of your findings? No, definitely not, Dr. Wallenstein replied. He spoke with a clipped accent. Our preliminary results demonstrate an association. Association is not causation, but it can be suggestive of such a relationship. DNA is like a software code composed of four letters, A, T, G, and C. We have known for quite some time that physical traits are controlled by the sequence of these letters. Variations in this sequence are what cause one person to have blue eyes, another to have brown, one person to be tall, another to be short. Our group hypothesized that DNA might also play a role in influencing complex behaviors such as aggression. We sequenced the genomes of 500 extremely violent criminals and compared their DNA to the DNA of inmates in prisons for non-violent offenses. We found that every one of the violent offenders had an identical sequence variation within what is known as the MAO gene. This change was not found in the DNA of the non-violent offenders or the general population. We are currently working on creating an animal model which may be able to establish a causative relationship more firmly between having the identified MAO sequence and a tendency toward violent sociopathy. A murder gene, Jack said ponderously as the reporter began to speak again. Time to go, Jack. We're going to be late if we don't leave now. Look outside. The rain let up just in time, Genevieve said, switching off the TV. Outside, the storm had indeed Like a sudden transient fever, effervesced as rapidly as it had come on. The afternoon sun shone bright again, quickly heating the asphalt driveway. By the time the emerald green McLaren, with Genevieve at the wheel and Jack in the passenger seat, emerged from the garage, a silver curtain of rising steam was hanging over the blacktop. The windshield of the car fogged over almost immediately. 20 years of marriage and we're still leaving steam on the windshield, Jack said as Genevieve reached up and wiped the glass clean with the sleeve of her blouse. Buckle up, Jack. I'm going to try to make up some time, Genevieve said, ignoring his comment about the windshield and accelerating rapidly down the mile-long driveway. We could have taken the chopper. That thing is so obnoxious. All the noise would ruin the ambiance, Genevieve said, raising her voice to be heard over the roar of the car's engine as she pulled out onto the road.